Now let's move on to some predictions. I'm sure our viewers will be looking forward to that. So let's start with India first. What do you predict for India in terms of the political side and Modi ji? Let's talk about the political aspect of Indian governance.
So I really believe, based on Modi's chart, I really believe that India is in good hands. I actually predicted very early in his first term itself. My prediction was that he's a really sincere and genuine and dharmic person, and he will. My prediction was that he will win the second term, also the third term, and he will win the second term even stronger than the first term, and third term also very strongly. He will win three terms. My prediction was that second term will be the most important one because he will accomplish a lot of major reforms and major things during the second term. And also, what I predicted was that in his second term, world will be in a very turbulent and chaotic phase. Lot of bad things will be happening in the world, and during the turbulent and chaotic phase, Modi ji will lead India with a capable leadership, and India will be very fortunate to have him in particularly in the second term. And my prediction was also that he will win the third term very comfortably, and he will not complete the term, and he will voluntarily transfer the reins of power to a younger leader, and he will take sannyasa from politics. He will renounce politics and he will focus on his spiritual sadhana, and that is what I see from his horoscope. But I do believe that India is in very good hands. And one thing I want to say is I have been predicting since for 2 decades before 2000 that between 2000 and 2030, this is based on a very long-term mundane chart, between 2000 and 2030, world will go through a geopolitical transformation, the kind of which we haven't seen any time in our lifetimes. And this is not a once in a century or once in a decade transformation. This is a once in millennia transformation. So there'll be a major transformation. And as a result of this transformation, US, which is unquestioned number one in the world, will become like what happened to UK in the 1950s and 1960s. It'll be still powerful, but it'll be a second rung power like what happened to UK. And China, which seems to be a challenger to US supremacy in the world, will have a big rise and then just implode under the weight of its own rise and due to internal rebellion and also picking fights with various other countries. So I expect that China will, as a matter of fact, when I predicted it long back, it did not make sense to people, at least to people that know me. They said, how can China really collapse? But now there are some indications with the coronavirus. China lost all the goodwill with the world, and a lot of countries are talking about over reliance on China and moving manufacturing, etc., away from China. So what I predicted is between specifically 2015 to 2025, the changes will be most drastic, and particularly after 2019 June, there is for over a decade period of time, 2019 to 2030 or so, there is a chance of major wars. So what is likely is as a result of this pandemic that is going on in the world right now, lot of relationships in the world will be broken, and economy will take a big hit, and there will be a lot of unrest in various countries from people who are affected by the economic downturn, and as a result there'll be some wars. I expect that US, I predicted several years back that US after 2019 will engage in a war with Iran, with Iran as the epicenter, basically a war in the Middle East, where various major countries will be involved. And this is likely to happen over the next decade, most likely within the next few years itself. And at the same time, China is likely to engage in some wars in the Southeast Asia. And my prediction a few years back was that China will break into at least five different nations, just like what happened to USSR in the 1980s. That will happen to China in 2020s. So what will happen is with these wars and the economic downturn, people will start to suffer, and all the unrest that is basically under the surface in Chinese society, because economy is great, people are keeping quiet, their mouth shut. And once economy is bad and there are wars and people don't know what's going on, all the rebellion will come to the surface, and Communist Party will not be able to contain it, and it will break into at least five different countries. Tibet and a few other countries will become independent nations within China.
Tibet will finally get its freedom, you think?
My expectation is in the next decade, Tibet will become an independent country, as well as there will be at least five new countries, five different countries that will be that will be formed from what is known as China today, and China will be significantly weakened. And also, I expect that during this turbulent phase, when there are major wars and economic downturn, India will also face economic downturn because India cannot be completely isolated. It's not completely isolated from the world, but India will mostly avoid the penalty of all these major wars. And while all the big powers are busy in the Middle East and in the Southeast Asia, India will take care of some situation with its neighbors. Let me put it subtly. So India will focus on their neighbors and clean up some things there, some historical mess in the neighborhood. So India will be able to make some progress in their neighborhood and consolidate some things there. But as a result, because India will be least affected, India will emerge very strong at the end of this major war period, just like US did after the Second World War. India will emerge as the next world leader. And one more thing I predicted in 2000 was capitalism. People assume that when in 1980s communism fell, people assume that capitalism won. But capitalism, as we know today, my expectation is that that will also fail in the next decade, and it will be replaced with a new version of capitalism, which will find a good balance between individual greed and collective responsibility towards all the people and even the society and environment. So there'll be a more balanced and dharmic economic model. And as the world struggles with struggling economy, with the falling economy, India will provide leadership by defining what the future looks like, especially from the economy point of view. So I expect that by 2030 and especially by 2034, India will be a clear world leader both morally and economically and also politically. So that is what I expect in the long run. And Modi is the right person to start the transition phase during a very turbulent period in the world history.
Now, in the very short term, since everybody's under lockdown, what is your prediction for the US and for India in with this COVID crisis? When will we get out of it? Will we get out of it? Is there a vaccine or some remedy around the corner, or is this a long drawn out process?
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't want to be a doomsayer, but I have to call it as I see it. Unfortunately, even though in the end result will be very good for the world as a result of the crisis we are going through, the crisis will not end anytime soon. And people are just looking at this pandemic as a major problem, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just one thing. This is basically a time when environment has decided to take control and clean up the mess that we have created so that a sustainable world will be created for our own well-being and posterity. So I'm afraid that this is not the end. There may be more to come. And also as a result of the economic crisis, there'll be a lot of mess happening in the world. And I expect that in the December of this year, there is a solar eclipse, complete solar eclipse at the middle of December, and also there is a conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter on the winter solstice there. So that period, second half of December, is a really critical period. There are likely to be more disastrous events for humanity during that period. So as for this specific pandemic, I don't see it ending soon. I don't expect that there'll be a vaccine found and it will magically work. It will solve the problem. This will drag on for a while, and most likely uh, I think India is doing the right thing by taking it very seriously. But in the end, what I expect, especially with the US, is they will make a pragmatic call that economy is more important than a few lives, and they will, as we already saw, there are some states are partially open. I believe that we will resume economic activity and we'll try to go back to life and pretend that this doesn't exist. And people who are vulnerable populations will protect. They will be left to fend for themselves, and they will protect themselves well. But eventually, we'll reach a state where this virus will spread in the society like water under mat. So it will be there everywhere, and a lot of people will not be affected by it, but there will be a lot of people also dying from this. So even though right now the number is 80,000 or so in US, the number of people who died from this pandemic in US, I expect that the final number will be much higher, something that we can't even imagine, in hundreds of thousands. And I expect a major wave in the June July timeframe after around June 20 or so. Astrologically, I expect another major wave at that period of time. And also in the November, December, I expect another major wave. But in general, I expect a lot of impact in US. But people after some time will basically say, this is something we just have to live with. And also, I think more than the vaccine, the antibody testing will become more prevalent. They will start doing antibody testing to make sure that somebody is clear and give confidence to people that they can go out. But I'm afraid this will be pretty bad for US. But in the end, they will lose both. They will also lose people, and they will also lose the economy. It will not end up saving the economy. Economy will really struggle, and then because of that, there will be a tendency to distract people's attention, and all these wars that I'm talking about in the next few years, they will have their root in this pandemic. Basically, this is the starting point.
Okay. Now, what is the interim parihara that you suggest for people either in the US or in India to combat the effects of the COVID?
One thing to put bluntly, collectively speaking, I don't think this is the work of some demon or something. This is mother's work. Mother, basically, this is mother's play. She wanted to, the path we were on, the modern technology is on, the modern capitalism is on. It is unsustainable. World cannot sustain itself. And after 100 years, this planet will not be left. So this is basically mother's play. This pandemic was not created by a demonic force, but by divine forces to control the situation. So this pandemic, as well as other negative things that are going to happen, are basically a nature's way to create the right balance, a dharmic balance in the world. So collectively, it will be stupid to basically try to stop this. This will, until the required chain reaction has sufficiently been triggered, this will not basically end. So collectively, I don't really think there's much we can do, or we should even try to do. But individually, we can all protect ourselves. Number one, first of all, this is not like the plague or cholera that used to kill a lot of people in the old days. The mortality rate is not very high. It is dangerous for some people, but so first of all, even if somebody is diagnosed with coronavirus, COVID-19, don't basically panic. think think that, yeah, I'll overcome this. Strengthen your immunity, have enough exercise, have enough sleep, because exercise and sleep are very important, and take some precautions. There are some good remedies in Ayurveda, and you can take some herbal remedies, and you can also take things like zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C, etc. And in Ayurveda, things like ashwagandha are very helpful. Ashwagandha, gurji is very helpful, also known as giloi. So you can take them as hot tea, or you can take them with honey. There are you can search on internet Ayurvedic remedies for immunity, and you can do it. So work on increasing your immunity and maintain positive attitude, and tell yourself that all this is happening for good in the long run. This will establish a dharmic world in the end, more sustainable dharma basically. Also, world will have peace, but which is sustainable. The peace that we have right now in the world is not sustainable. So there will be sustainable and dharmic peace in the world as a result of this. So tell yourself that this is for good, and protect yourself, and do sadhana for yourself, especially ugradevatas like Narasimha. There is a mantra called Ugram Veram Mahavishnu that is a very powerful mantra for individual protection. And if you are inclined towards Devi, then Durga Saptasati or Saptasloki is very important, very useful. So depending on your inclination, especially ugradevatas are very useful at a time like this. So you can worship any devata that you are interested in. You can also do a fire ritual by yourself. There are a lot of, like mentioned at the beginning, there are a lot of Homa manuals on my website. It was Divine Mother's command to my guru to simplify the ritual of Homa, because it has been made so complicated that very few people actually do it, and even the few who do it don't enjoy it. They just do it so mechanically because it's so complicated. So boil down to the basics, what is really essential, and also do it with a sense of understanding of what you're doing and why you are doing. So there are a lot of manuals on my website, and there are thousands of people who are doing it. If you do that, if you do a fire ritual by yourself to any devata that you are interested in, because there are a lot of devatas covered on in the manuals on my website, vedicastrology.org, you can progress individually, protect yourself materially, and progress spiritually. And third, you are contributing to universal increase of dharma. So it is something that I strongly recommend. This is a good time to do it, especially in lockdown. If you have extra time and getting bored, just spend 15 minutes every day doing a homa, and then after that, meditate in front of holy fire. Because meditation is very good, but in front of a bright fire, meditation is even more amplified. It is very powerful.
Okay, okay, thank you. Now, what do you think about the elections around the corner in the US? What are your predictions for that?
Yeah. Donald Trump is one thing I want to say. One thing I want to mention is people, a lot of Indians especially, they compare Modi and Trump and they think that they are very similar people. But I really, astrologically, when I see their horoscope, they are like, they're different like chalk and cheese. The similarities are very superficial, like how they interact with media, some conservative ideology, etc. There are some superficial similarities, but they're like chalk and cheese. They're totally polar opposites of each other. And they may cooperate with each other because they have to. That's the dharma. So Modi may cooperate with Trump because it's his Raja Dharma, but he's a totally different person. Trump is no Modi. Please remember that. Now, based on Trump's chart, based on Ashtotri Dasha, he was running Surya Dasha, very powerful Dasha in the last 5 years. And the Dasha is going to end in June. So I have a strong feeling that he will end up losing this election. And not only that, my expectation is over the next decade or so, because his moon is very weak. He is in Gandanta, he is in deep Gandanta, he's in Nicha, he's eclipsed by Ketu. He will be a frustrated man. He will be almost restricted to some place, maybe a mental asylum or something. He will have a really terrible fortune over the next decade or so. And I don't expect him to win. Unfortunately, we don't have accurate chart of Biden, so I have to spend some time fixing his time, making sure that the time is right to see if he has the potential. But based on US chart itself, I expect that there will be some turbulence in this election. Things will be delayed. Things will not happen normally. In general, my expectation is this year will continue to be a very weird year, a very strange and weird year, and the elections probably will be delayed, and the results will be surprising in the end. But I don't anticipate that Trump will continue to be president after this election. But the end will be very aggressive and violent.
Okay. Okay. Uh, so for young people that need to get into Jyotisha and people like you who've gotten in by just out of interest, but then there are some things that we can do with institutions and with structure to get young people interested in Jyotisha and bring it out as and do more research and bring it out as a shastra. Now, what would you suggest we do as individuals, individual families, and as society, especially in India? How do we revive this field?
So as a society, I think society can really encourage astrology. And if you find a good astrologer, basically, even if, see, a lot of astrologers are commercial, but some of the good astrologers are not commercial. For example, my father never took any specific fee. Now if you go to an astrologer, there is a fee based on how many minutes you spend. My father, basically, you come, he answers you. Whatever you want to give, you give. I am the same way. I'm totally non-commercial. But there are a lot of good astrologers who are non-commercial. Try to encourage them. Try to basically see. I have a good job, so I don't need my livelihood from astrology. But we need to encourage, create a class of astrologers who are good, non-commercial, and they get enough livelihood through astrology alone. So for that, society has a role, and also government has a role. And as individuals, if you are young and interested and curious about astrology, do get into astrology. Do learn astrology. And there are a lot of books. Like I said, Dr. B.V. Raman's books, even though he talks about the superficial aspects of astrology, they give you very good grounding. So read those books. And there are a lot of classics, but definitely Bruhat Parasar Horasastram is a really important book to have. And there are a lot of books, but that's really the magnum opus that you should really study. And for those who only know English and not Sanskrit and want a quick start, there is a book that I wrote, published by Sagar Publications. I later worked with the publication and also made it available free online. So if you go to my website, vedicastrologer.org, you can download the free ebook. It's called Vedic Astrology: An Integrated Approach. It covers various aspects of astrology and it covers them in a scientific way. It is written like a science textbook with like clear examples, exercises, etc. So you can study that. And also, if you go to my website, there is 400 hours of material, teaching from scratch to people who did not know. So there are some MP3s worth of 400 hours material. So people can can learn that also. But after I taught all that, wrote the book and taught, I have reformed my understanding and some of the subtleties that were incorrectly interpreted by people before me. I have reformed those. So this research will go on. But like I said, research needs to go on. There are a lot of missing links, and there are some things that are not correctly understood. So please try to do some research. There are two aspects of research. One is looking at the Sanskrit text and interpreting it fresh and trying various interpretations practically. And second is just practical exploration. Try various charts and see what is working, what is not working, etc. And the other thing is do a lot of sadhana. Make sure that you spend enough time doing some spiritual sadhana. It can be meditation, it can be a homa, it can be visiting temples, it can be service to people. But make sure you do enough sadhana. The other thing I couldn't emphasize more is it is very useful to know Sanskrita and then try to read the text in Sanskrita itself, because sometimes when you see an English translation, the subtlety of the meaning may be lost. The words basically don't mean the same thing when you use a different language. The connotation is not the same. And sometimes it's not just missing the connotation, the actual meaning is coded in a double meaning of a word. I'll give you a very simple example that really drives this point home. In astrology, there are 12 houses. Okay, from the Lagna, you count 12 signs as 12 houses. The Sanskrita word for this is bhava. Okay, and then Parasara taught some mathematical manipulation of each house. You do some mathematical formula and come up with something known as pada for that house. Each house, there is a fourth house, fourth pada, third house, third pada, etc. And the pada may be in a different sign. And he said, use the fourth house and this pada to see somebody's vehicles, comforts from vehicles, etc. So he did not say which is what, what is the difference between them. He just used them interchangeably. But obviously, if there are two parameters, they must show different things. And the rishis never really, like I said earlier, they don't spoon feed you. And it's not clearly taught by anybody. One day it struck me when I was looking at the words that he used in Sanskrita. The words are bhava and pada. What does pada mean? It has a lot of meanings like leg, etc. But one clear meaning is pada means word and bhava means meaning. So there is a link between them, meaning and word. What is the link between them? Word is tangible. You can hear the words I'm saying. They're very tangible, clear, external. Whereas meaning is internal. It is intangible. It is inside my mind. So when you look at the fourth house, the happiness from the vehicle is internal. So that is like bhava. That must be seen from the bhava of the fourth, not the pada. Whereas the actual vehicle somebody drives is the pada. So fourth pada should be seen for actually seeing the external vehicle somebody drives. Of course, just like you try to understand the meaning in my mind by using the words that I am uttering, we see external things. If somebody has a BMW, we assume that he is happy. He may not be. If somebody has a bicycle only, we assume he is unhappy with the vehicle. He may be very happy. So you can distinguish all these things. So this is just an example. Like this, when it clicks to you, you see the link between the words, and you see, oh, this is what he must mean. Like this, whether it's jyotisha or Veda or various Vedangas, rishis were never direct. They basically taught in a coded way so that there are multiple layers of meaning. And depending on your patrata, depending on your maturity, spiritual and intellectual maturity, the right meaning will reveal to you at the right time. So from that point of view, I can't encourage younger people enough to learn Sanskrita. And if I did not have knowledge of Sanskrit at a young age, and if I was just an engineer, I wouldn't have really done whatever I did in Jyotisha. So it is really important to learn Sanskrita and read the Mola Granthas, which are in Sanskrita.
Thank you so much for your time. Namaste for coming here and giving us a fantastic discussion and your views, your predictions. We hope to have you soon again. And thanks again for your time, Shri Narasimha Rao. It was a pleasure to talk to you this morning.
Namaste. Thank you very much. Namaste to all of you.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here and also hit the bell icon to make sure you get notified. To donate, please click this button.